The arrival of arrogance. The sky above Earth turned dark, not from clouds, but from the shadow of something massive. A giant alien ship appeared over the city of Tranquil Heights. It was not a peaceful visit. The ship didn't ask for permission. It hovered like a giant bird of war, blocking the sun, casting fear across every face below. They had arrived. The Theralin warrior women. People gathered, staring up in shock. News spread quickly. The aliens had returned, not for war, but to inspect. That's what the Earth government said. But everyone knew the truth. The Theralin didn't respect Earth. They mocked it. For years, they called humans soft flesh with soft hearts. Their leaders laughed when Earth asked to join the Galactic Peace Treaty. Earth was seen as weak, because humans chose peace over power. But now they came to test Earth's defenses, only to laugh harder. A ramp opened from the bottom of the ship. A tall, silver-skinned warrior woman stepped out. Her armor shimmered like sharp glass. Her hair was jet black, tied in warrior braids. She was proud, cold, dangerous. Her name was Commander Virexa. Behind her, 6 more Theralin soldiers walked in perfect line. All women, all strong, all with the same smirk on their faces. Earth's military leaders waited at the landing zone, stiff and polite. Virexa looked around slowly. So, this is the mighty Earth Defense Force. Her voice was sharp like ice. I've seen children's toys look more dangerous. Some of her soldiers laughed. A few Earth officers turned red with anger, but they stayed quiet. Orders were clear. Do not insult the Theralin. One general stepped forward. We welcome you to Earth, Commander Virexa. We've prepared a full demonstration of our defense systems. Virexa rolled her eyes. Very well. Entertain me. The soldiers marched toward the open field, where Earth's best tanks and fighter drones were displayed. The alien women walked slowly, like queens inspecting ants. They pointed and laughed. These machines still use metal bullets. One said. No energy shields, said another. I feel safer with a kitchen knife. The humans standing nearby clenched their fists. Then, something unexpected happened. A man walked across the field. He wore no uniform, just simple clothes, jeans, a gray shirt, boots covered in dust. He didn't walk fast. He wasn't running, but he was heading straight toward the aliens. A guard yelled, "Hey, civilians must stay back." But the man didn't stop. He just kept walking. Virexa narrowed her eyes. Who is this fool? The human general looked confused. I don't know. He's not part of the demonstration. The man finally stopped, right in front of the Theralin. He looked up at Virexa, completely calm. And then, he smiled. It wasn't a nervous smile. It wasn't fake. It was calm, confident, even a little amused. Are you enjoying the show? He asked. Virexa's eyes narrowed. Who are you? Name's Dane, he said simply. Just a man who got curious. Curious, she repeated, almost insulted. You dare walk into my space without fear? He shrugged. Why should I be afraid? The air went silent. One of the alien soldiers stepped forward, her hand on her weapon. You're either brave or stupid, human. Dane looked at her and said, maybe both. Some Earth soldiers held their breath. They expected him to be grabbed, shocked, maybe even killed. But Virexa didn't move. She stared at Dane. For some reason, her mind didn't rush to attack. She studied his eyes. They weren't scared. They weren't impressed either. They were curious, calm, like he saw something in her that no one else dared to look for. Virexa stepped closer. You think you're equal to us? He looked up at her. No, he said. I think you're better at war, but I also think you confuse kindness with weakness. That's your mistake. She blinked. Her soldiers frowned. No one speaks to the commander like that. One barked. But Dane didn't flinch. He simply turned around and walked away, hands in his pockets. The humans watching were frozen in place. The alien women were silent. Virexa stood still, her mind spinning. That Earth man had no weapons, no rank, nothing special. And yet, she couldn't stop watching him leave. The man who didn't flinch. The training field was silent. The Earth soldiers whispered. The alien warrior women stared in silence. The man who had no weapons, no armor, and no fear had just walked away from Commander Virexa. And she let him. Virexa stood like a statue. Her black eyes locked on the direction where Dane had vanished. Her soldiers waited for a command, but none came. One of her lieutenants finally spoke. "Commander, should we punish him for disrespect?" Virexa didn't answer right away. Her fingers touched the side of her chin, slowly. "No," she said, voice low. "Let him walk." "But why?" Another asked. "He insulted your authority." "No," she said firmly now. "He challenged it." "There's a difference." Her soldiers exchanged puzzled glances. They had never seen their commander hesitate. Never seen her look thoughtful. Back at the Earth base, Dane walked back toward the edge of the military base, acting like nothing happened. A few Earth officers followed him, whispering questions. "Who is that guy? Is he some kind of secret agent? Why wasn't he afraid?" But Dane didn't answer anyone. He just walked calmly to the edge of the barracks and sat on a bench, looking at the sky. Soon, a high-ranking Earth commander approached him. "Dane, what were you doing?" The officer asked. "That was reckless. She could have had you killed." Dane smiled. "Maybe, but she didn't." "Are you crazy?" "No, I just think they're not as powerful as they pretend to be." The commander frowned. "They could destroy this whole base." "I don't mean their weapons," Dane said softly. "I mean their pride. It's so big, it's heavy. Makes them blind, makes them lonely." The commander didn't know what to say. Inside the alien ship, back in her private quarters, Virexa stood in front of a mirror. She wasn't admiring herself. She was confused. That human's face appeared again and again in her mind. Dane. His calm voice. His smile. The way he stood there like nothing scared him, not even her. She had met many warriors in her life, fought in battles, defeated beasts twice her size, but never had someone without a weapon made her heartbeat quicken. She suddenly punched the mirror. It cracked, but she didn't care. "Why can't I stop thinking about him?" she whispered. Her second-in-command, Jarrell, stepped in. "Commander, the Earth base has sent an invitation. They want to host a cultural exchange evening." Virexa raised an eyebrow. "A party? They call it a peace night. Music, food, no weapons allowed." Virexa almost laughed. What a soft species. But inside, a part of her whispered, "Will he be there?" That evening, the peace night. The hall was decorated with Earth banners and soft lights. Tables filled with food lined the walls. Both human soldiers and Theralin warriors stood around awkwardly. No one knew how to talk to each other. The alien women kept to themselves. The humans stayed near the buffet. And then, Dane walked in. No fanfare, no applause. But Virexa noticed him instantly. She watched as he picked up a drink and casually moved through the crowd. He greeted a few human officers, then walked straight toward the Theralin corner. Right toward her. Virexa tensed. Her soldiers stared. He stopped a few feet away, raised his glass, and said, "So, Commander, still think I'm just a fool?" She narrowed her eyes. "You are bold. I'll give you that. Bold enough to dance with you." The alien women gasped. One even dropped her drink. Virexa blinked. "Dance? It's what we do at peace events," Dane said. "Two people move to music instead of drawing swords." "I don't dance," Virexa said flatly. "I didn't ask if you dance well," Dane replied with a grin. "I just asked if you try." For a long moment, silence. Then slowly, unbelievably, Virexa stepped forward. The music was soft and slow, earth jazz. Dane offered his hand. Her fingers touched his. Electric. They moved slowly, awkwardly at first. Virexa had never done anything so strange, so human. But she let him guide her. Eyes in the hall widened. Mouths opened in shock. The alien commander, the pride of Thirlin, was dancing with a human man. Virexa leaned closer. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I don't believe in fear," Dane said. "I believe in knowing someone before judging them." "You think I can be known?" "I think you want to be known," Dane whispered. Something inside her chest tightened, warmed. It was strange, foreign, but not unpleasant. The aftermath. Later that night, Virexa stood outside, alone under the Earth sky. Stars above looked different here, softer. She heard footsteps. Dane again. "You think tonight changed anything?" she asked. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe not. But I saw something in your eyes." She turned to him. "What?" "Loneliness," he said. Her lips parted but no words came. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Virexa said softly, "You didn't flinch earlier, when I stepped toward you." "Why?" Dane looked up at the stars. "Because the scariest thing in the universe isn't death or war." "Then what is?" "Living without ever being truly seen," he said. Their eyes met, and in that quiet night, something began to bloom. Not war, not pride, but something more dangerous. "You call this weak?" Commander Virexa could not sleep. Her quarters aboard the Thirlin ship were quiet, cold, and metallic, just the way a warrior's space should be. But tonight, her mind was loud. Dane's words echoed inside her. "You confuse kindness with weakness. That's your mistake." No one had ever said that to her face. And yet, instead of anger, she felt something else. Doubt. Was it possible she had judged Earth too quickly? The next morning, a new challenge. The Thirlin delegation was scheduled to leave in 2 days. But before they could go, Earth's military wanted one last event, a friendly challenge day. Commander Virexa didn't care for games, but when she heard Dane would be participating, she accepted immediately. "I will challenge this Earthman myself," she declared. Her second-in-command, Zurel, raised an eyebrow. "Commander, a public match against a human." "He is not just any human," Virexa said quietly. At the training grounds, the sky was clear. Soldiers from both worlds gathered around a large open arena. The field was divided into 3 parts: strength, intelligence, and survival. "This isn't a fight," Earth's general explained. "Just 3 challenges, 1 Thirlin, 1 human. Let's test our best." The Thirlin chose Virexa. Earth had only 1 volunteer, Dane. He walked into the arena calmly, wearing a simple black t-shirt and brown boots. No armor, no helmet. Virexa stood tall in her light combat gear, her arms folded. "Still no armor, human?" He grinned. "Still no smile, alien?" Some alien soldiers gasped. Others laughed quietly. Virexa smirked despite herself. First challenge: strength. A heavy metal beam, 10 feet long and thick as a tree trunk, lay on the ground. The goal: lift and carry it across the finish line. Virexa went first. She bent down, gripped the beam, and with a loud grunt, lifted it over her shoulders. The crowd cheered as she marched forward. 30 seconds. Done. Then it was Dane's turn. He walked up, looked at the beam, and gave it a push. It didn't budge. The Thirlin soldiers laughed. "Weak," one whispered. But Dane didn't panic. He looked around, spotted a nearby roller platform used for cargo. He rolled it over, tilted the beam carefully, and slowly slid it onto the wheels. Then, with both hands, he pushed the platform forward and crossed the line in 20 seconds. The aliens went silent. Virexa stared. You cheated. No, Dane said. I adapted. Second challenge. Intelligence. A giant puzzle machine sat in the middle of the field. It had hundreds of rotating pieces, an ancient logic challenge from Therolan history. Only a few had solved it. Virexa stepped up, her fingers moving fast. She had trained on this puzzle since childhood. Her moves were sharp, confident. She finished in 4 minutes. Dane stepped forward. He didn't touch the puzzle right away. He circled it once, observing. Then again, slower. He crouched beside it, touched one gear, then smiled. In just 3 minutes, the machine clicked, lights blinked, and the puzzle opened. Solved. Virexa blinked. How did you do that? I watched it like I watch people, Dane said. You can't force the pieces. You listen first. Third challenge. Survival. They were dropped into a closed simulation dome. Artificial jungle. Low visibility. 1 hour to escape. No weapons. No help. Inside, the temperature was high. Moisture dripped from tree leaves. Hidden speakers created wild sounds, growls, hisses, roars. Virexa moved fast, slicing vines and clearing paths. Dane walked slowly, touching tree bark, smelling the air, picking up dropped fruits. Suddenly, a simulated beast jumped in front of Virexa, its claws swinging. She dodged, rolled, and landed a perfect kick. The beast vanished. She kept going. Meanwhile, Dane found a cave and used smoke from burning leaves to drive animals away. He found the exit first, using brain, not brawn. When both emerged, the score was clear. Dane, 2 wins. Virexa, 1 win. The crowd was silent. No one could believe it. After the challenge, Virexa approached Dane. You're clever, she said slowly. But is cleverness enough to survive a real war? Dane looked at her calmly. Is war all you live for? That question hit her harder than any weapon ever had. He continued, you mocked Earth because we choose peace, but maybe peace is harder than war. War is easy. You hit, you win, you lose. But peace, that takes strength. Strength, she repeated. To hold back, Dane said. To forgive. To understand. You think that's weak. Virexa didn't reply. Her heart was heavy. That night, the private talk. Later, in the quiet of the ship's observation deck, Virexa sat alone, staring at Earth's moon. Dane entered. You're not afraid to be alone in an alien ship, she asked. Not with you, he replied. She turned toward him. Why do you keep saying these things? What do you want? Dane sat beside her. I don't want anything. I just want you to see. You're not just a warrior. You're more. Virexa swallowed. My people don't respect peace. If I change, they'll see me as weak. Then maybe you're meant to lead them to something better. She looked at him for a long moment. You confuse me, Earthman. Good, Dane smiled. Maybe confusion is the first step to understanding. She didn't smile back, but her eyes softened. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. The night she watched him sleep. The Therolan ship floated high above the Earth base, like a silent beast with secrets. Inside its cold, metallic halls, Commander Virexa walked alone. Her footsteps echoed, sharp and sure, yet her heart was not. She had won battles. She had crushed rebellions. But tonight, something small, something human, had shaken her more than any war ever had. Dane, the human who spoke without fear. The one who danced without shame. The man who defeated her in mind and spirit. No weapon had touched her, but his words left marks. Virexa's private logs, personal thought recording. He didn't flinch. Not when I raised my blade. Not when I called him weak. He smiles when he should tremble. He listens when others shout. Why does my mind return to him when I close my eyes? At the human base, that night, Dane was offered a temporary guest room inside the Earth base. Nothing fancy. Just a bed, a small desk, and a window showing the dark sky. He sat at the window, watching the stars, sipping warm tea. There was a knock at the door. He opened it, expecting an officer. But no one was there. Except something shimmered behind a nearby pillar. He stepped out and saw her. Commander Varexa, in full armor, her face calm, her eyes uncertain. "You okay?" he asked casually. "I was walking," she said, "in a human military hallway." She looked away, then back. "I wished to observe how your kind rest. You came to watch me sleep." Her lips tightened. "Your sleeping habits are culturally interesting." Dane smiled. "You could have just asked." Varexa stepped forward, then stopped. Her hand hovered near her waist, where her weapon would usually rest. She had left it behind. "I don't understand this," she said softly. "This? What?" Dane asked, tilting his head. "You. The way you speak. The way you look at me. No fear. No hate. Not even desire." He raised an eyebrow. "You're used to being feared or worshipped. I'm used to being respected through power," she said firmly. Dane took a slow breath. "Respect doesn't need power. Sometimes it just needs someone to see you. The real you." Inside the room. "Come in," Dane said, stepping aside. Varexa hesitated, then entered. She looked at the small room. Her eyes went to the bed, the books, the window. No guards, no shields, no weapons. So vulnerable, so human. "How can you sleep in such an unguarded place?" she asked. Dane sat on the edge of the bed. "Because I'm not afraid." "Why not?" "Because I believe most creatures don't want to hurt. They just want to be understood." Her eyes searched his face. "You think I want to be understood?" He nodded. "Yes, you're curious. Curious enough to come here tonight." She stepped closer. "My people would mock me for this. And yet you're here." He patted the other side of the bed. "Sit. Just sit. No rules. No armor." Varexa stared at the bed for a long time. Finally, she reached up and unclipped her shoulder guard, then the chest plate. Piece by piece, the armor came off, until she sat beside him in a simple underlayer. For the first time, she looked less like a commander and more like a woman. The talk in the dark. They sat in silence for a while. The hum of the ship outside the window was the only sound. Varexa looked up. "Your people, do they see love as weakness?" Dane shook his head. "No. Love is seen as strength. It's the reason we fight to protect." Varexa was quiet. In Theralan culture, love is considered a dangerous infection. It softens the blade, clouds the mind. "Maybe that's why your kind is always at war," Dane said gently. Varexa didn't argue. "Have you ever been in love?" Dane asked. She blinked slowly. "No. We are not taught to feel. We are taught to lead, to fight, to win. Do you want to feel?" Varexa looked at him. "I don't know. But I don't want to go back the same." She stood up and walked to the window. "There's something in you, Dane. Something I don't understand. You make me question everything I was raised to believe." "That's good," Dane said. "It means your mind is stronger than your training." The unspoken pull. It was late now. The lights were dim. Varexa turned toward the door. "I should leave," she said. "Your people might misunderstand." He nodded slowly. "You're probably right." But neither moved. Finally, she stepped forward and did something that surprised even herself. She reached out and gently placed her hand on his. "Sleep well, Earthman," she whispered. He smiled. "You too, warrior woman." Then she turned and walked out the door, but she didn't go far. She stood just outside his room, leaning against the wall, watching, listening. as if making sure he was safe. Or maybe, making sure she was. On the Theralin ship, moments later, Jarell, her second-in-command, met her at the ship's entry platform. "You were gone long, Commander." "I was learning," Virexa said. "Learning what?" She looked at the Earth City lights in the distance. "That peace isn't weakness, and that strength can wear a soft face." Jarell said nothing, but the look in her eyes showed worry. If the commander changed too much, the Theralin High Council would not stay silent. And deep in the ship, a silent message was already being sent. To Theralin Command, Commander Virex's behavior is becoming compromised. The warrior who blushed. Commander Virexa had never blushed in her life. Not during battle. Not during the harsh rites of Theralin trials. Not even when she was named the youngest warrior to ever lead a fleet. But today, it happened. And it happened because of him. Morning briefing. A strange feeling. Inside the Theralin command chamber aboard their hovering ship, her warriors stood in formation. Tactical maps hovered mid-air. Earth's cities were being scanned. Military bases, energy grids, even cultural archives. But Virexa was distracted. Her eyes flicked across the data, but her mind returned to the night before, the small human room, the quiet conversation, the warmth of Dane's voice. "Do you want to feel?" he had asked. And for the first time in her life, she hadn't known the answer. Jarell cleared her throat. "Commander, you seem distant." "I'm focused," Virexa replied sharply. But her voice didn't carry its usual sting. It was softer, less cold. Jarell glanced at her quietly, then added, "The High Council responded. They're concerned about your increasing contact with the human male." Virex's jaw tightened. "It's not their concern." "It will be," Jarell whispered, "if your heart starts to show." Meanwhile on Earth, a surprise visit. Dane was eating breakfast alone. Just eggs, toast, and fruit, in the outdoor section of the Earth base canteen. The morning sun warmed the metal tables. Soldiers walked by, whispering. Because standing in the middle of the Earth base, tall and radiant in her dark blue Theralin robe, was Commander Virexa. And she was walking toward him. He looked up and raised an eyebrow. "You found the breakfast spot." She ignored the stares from Earth soldiers and sat across from him. "I've never eaten human food. You want to try some?" She looked at the eggs with deep suspicion. "Are these animal offspring?" "They're eggs. We don't hatch them. We eat them." She poked one with her finger, then sniffed it. Dane laughed. "Don't worry. It's not a trap." She narrowed her eyes. "On Theralin, we're trained never to trust food from strangers." "Well, lucky for you, I'm not a stranger anymore." That line hit her like a soft blow. She looked at him. His hair was messy from sleep. His clothes were wrinkled. He looked completely human. Yet something in his eyes felt like truth. Safety. She took a small bite, then blinked. "This is warm." "Glad to hear it," Dane said, sipping his drink. She set her fork down slowly. "Why do you do this?" "Do what?" "Treat me like I'm normal. Like I'm not a threat." Dane looked at her gently. "Because underneath that armor, you're not a threat. You don't know me." "I think I do," he said softly. "And I think you're not used to anyone seeing you." Her breath caught. Then it happened. Just for a second. A small flicker. Her cheeks turned faintly pink. The great warrior, the fearsome commander, blushed. She quickly turned her face. "The Earth sun is too warm. It's making my skin react." Dane smiled. "Sure. Let's blame the sun." A walk through the garden. After breakfast, they walked side by side through the base's botanical garden. It was small, but green and peaceful. Virexa looked at the plants. Earth has too many colors. Theralin is gray. Cold. Simple. That sounds lonely. "It is," she admitted. "We don't have gardens. We have halls of stone. Dane picked a small yellow flower and handed it to her. "Here, your first earth flower." She held it like it might break. "What does it do?" "It just exists," he said. "Beautiful without reason, like some people." She stared at him, unsure what to say. A soft wind blew her hair, and for the first time, she let it fall out of her warrior braid. That night, the unexpected gift. Later that evening, Dane returned to his room and found a small object on his bed. It was not from Earth. It was a small metal cube engraved with alien script. When he touched it, a blue hologram appeared. It was Virexa, recorded. "I don't give gifts. Theralin warriors do not share emotions. But this is a memory cube. It holds my first battle, my first failure, my first scar. I'm giving it to you, because I no longer want to hide those parts." Dane held the cube tightly. His heart felt heavier and lighter at the same time. On the Theralin ship, Trouble Brews, far above, inside the ship's hidden chamber, Zurel was reporting to the High Council via private transmission. "She is becoming too close to the human," she whispered. "Her judgment is clouded. I request permission to initiate Phase 2. The Council's reply was cold and sharp. "Approved. The human must be tested. If he fails, he will be eliminated." Zurel bowed her head. "Understood." Meanwhile, Virexa's conflict. Back in her quarters, Virexa stood in front of the mirror again. But tonight, she didn't wear armor. She wore a simple robe, her hair loose, her expression unsure. She touched her lips softly, then looked at the door. For a moment, her hand hovered over the console to call Dane. But she didn't. Instead, she whispered to herself, "Why do I feel like a girl again, afraid of being seen?" Her own reflection didn't answer. Final scene. The voice of the heart. That night, Dane stood on the edge of the Earth base, looking at the stars. Alone. Until a voice came from behind. "You think we can ever be more than enemies." He turned. She was standing there. No armor. No weapons. Just Virexa. Dane smiled gently. "I already do." She stepped closer. Close enough that he could see the small lines under her eyes, the slight tremble in her lips. She whispered, "If I reach for your hand, will I still be a warrior?" He didn't speak. He just took her hand softly. And in that moment, under the starlight, the galaxy's strongest warrior felt something stronger than fear. She felt hope. The bond no war could break. The bond had begun. It was invisible. No chains, no rules, no orders. But it was strong. Stronger than armor. Stronger than pride. Stronger than war. Commander Virexa and the Earthmen, Dane, now walked a silent line between two worlds. One world called it betrayal. The other called it impossible. But for the two of them, it felt like truth. The High Council's decision. Far across the stars, on the gray planet of Theralin, the High Council sat in a circle of stone. Their faces were hidden beneath silver masks. They watched the recorded transmissions from Virexa's ship in silence. When the final image showed Virexa holding Dane's hand, one council member spoke. "Our finest commander has been infected." Another added, "Her mind is no longer her own. This human must be removed." The leader of the council raised her hand. "Begin the severance protocol. If she refuses the command, she will be disowned, and the human will be eliminated." Back on Earth, the warning. Virexa received the message in her private chamber. Her fingers trembled as she read the order. It was clear. You are to return to Theralin within one cycle. Alone. Cut the bond. Leave the human. Or face permanent exile. Zurel entered, silent and watching. "You reported me," Virexa said without turning. "I did what was required," Zurel replied. "You are no longer thinking as a warrior. You are thinking as a woman." Virexa turned slowly, her eyes colder now. "And you think that makes me weak." "I think it makes you dangerous. For a moment, the room was full of silence. Heavy, bitter. Jarell left without another word. That evening, the goodbye. That wasn't. Virexa met Dane at the garden again. This time, she didn't speak for a long time. Her eyes were distant. Her hands stayed folded tightly in front of her. Dane noticed. "You're leaving, aren't you?" She nodded once. "When?" "Tomorrow morning, before the sun rises." He looked at the ground. "Because of me?" She didn't answer. But he already knew. She reached into her robe and handed him something. A metal ring, small, flat, engraved with Therilin runes. "What's this?" he asked. "It's a warrior's bond token," she said quietly. "In Therilin culture, we don't give these. We earn them, or die with them." "Then why give it to me?" "Because you saw me," she whispered. "The real me. And I don't want to forget what that felt like." Dane's voice cracked. "You don't have to go." "I do," she said. "If I stay, they will hurt you. They see you as a threat." He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. "No," she said. "If you touch me again, I won't be able to walk away." Then she turned and left. Not like a warrior. Not like a queen. But like someone breaking their own heart. Midnight. The escape plan. Dane couldn't sleep. He sat staring at the bond token in his hand, his thoughts wild. Angry. Sad. Afraid. Then a message blinked on his room's tablet screen. From an unknown source. It read, "They won't let her go alone. Jarell plans to kill her once she boards the ship. Meet me in the West Hangar. I can help you reach her. A friend." Dane didn't think twice. He grabbed his boots and ran. The hangar. A risky rescue. In the shadows of the Earth base's West Hangar, Dane met someone unexpected. Lieutenant Mira, a half-human, half-Therilin diplomat. She had worked silently between both worlds, unknown to most. "I've seen too many wars begin with fear," she told Dane. "But you and Virexa, you are something rare. I want to help." Together, they snuck aboard a supply shuttle that was heading toward the Therilin cruiser at dawn. On the cruiser, confrontation. Virexa stood alone in the ship's departure chamber, her armor back on, her face blank. Jarell entered, carrying a ceremonial blade. "You were once my commander," she said calmly, "but you're no longer fit to lead." Virexa didn't flinch. "So this is the punishment for feeling." Jarell raised the blade. "This is the price for betrayal." Suddenly, the door blasted open. Dane ran in, coughing through the smoke. "Not today," he shouted. Virexa's eyes widened. "Dane," Jarell snarled. "You brought him here. You disgrace." Before she could finish, Virexa turned and grabbed Jarell's arm, twisting it sharply. The blade dropped. "No one touches him," Virexa said, her voice dark and powerful. Jarell staggered back. "Then you have made your choice." "I have," Virexa said, and she reached for Dane's hand. The stand. Declaration of exile. The ship's comms crackled. The High Council's voice filled the chamber. "Commander Virexa, you have broken the law. You have chosen a human. From this moment forward, you are no longer Therilin. Your bloodline is erased. You are exiled." Virexa looked up. "So be it. And the human." She looked at Dane, then spoke clearly. "He is mine." The line went silent, then ended. The aftermath. New home, new beginning. 1 week later, the Therilin ship left Earth without its commander. Jarell was appointed in her place. Cold, calculating, but the damage was done. Virexa remained on Earth, no longer a commander, but something else. Something new. She wore simple clothing now. She ate breakfast outside. She planted her first flower, and Dane was always by her side. Final scene. The words she could never say. One quiet evening, they sat on a rooftop watching the stars. Dane leaned closer. You okay? She nodded. I lost everything I was trained to love. But did you gain something? She turned toward him, and for the first time she said it. I love you, Earthman. He smiled and kissed her softly under the moonlight, proof that some bonds, not even war, could break. They came to mock Earth, but stayed for love. They came to Earth as warriors. They came with laughter in their throats and pride in their bones. They came to mock, to measure, to leave. But one human man changed everything. 1 month later, a new kind of peace. The world had changed, even if most people didn't realize it. Far above Earth, the Theralin cruiser floated silently in orbit. But it no longer scanned Earth's defenses. It no longer mocked Earth's culture. Instead, it observed, quietly, respectfully. Inside the ship, Commander Zarel watched Earth from the observation deck. One of her lieutenants approached. Should we continue the extraction mission? Zarel shook her head. No, we are no longer at war with Earth. But Virexa, she disobeyed everything. She abandoned her post. She bonded with a human. Zarel narrowed her eyes. Yes, and yet, our people talk more about her now than they ever did about any war victory. Even my own soldiers ask questions they never dared to ask before. On Earth, a warrior in love, Virexa no longer wore armor. Her days of battle were behind her, but her strength had not faded. It had simply changed. She now worked as Earth's interspecies advisor, helping alien visitors understand human culture, human peace, and most importantly, human emotion. Beside her, always, was Dane. He had not changed much on the outside. Same smile, same quiet courage, but inside, he now carried the heart of a woman once trained to conquer galaxies. They lived in a simple home on the edge of the Earth base, surrounded by green fields, wind turbines, and a small garden filled with strange alien and Earth flowers, growing side by side. The first visitor. One morning, a Theralin ship landed on Earth, small, sleek, and silent. From it stepped a young warrior, female, tall, proud, but nervous. She walked up to the Earth base and asked, "Where is the human who tamed our storm?" The guards were confused. She repeated, "I want to meet the man who made Commander Virexa choose peace." Word spread fast. Soon, 3 more Theralin women arrived. Then 5. Then a dozen. They didn't come to fight. They didn't come to challenge. They came to learn. Council shock. On the Theralin homeworld, the High Council was thrown into silence. The once proud warrior race had never accepted change, until now. Messages poured in from ships and fleets across the galaxy. I wish to study Earth diplomacy, requesting permission to bond with Earth partners. Why were we never taught what love truly means? For the first time in centuries, the Council felt something strange. Fear. Not fear of war. Fear of change. And change was coming fast. Virex's speech, broadcast across worlds. A special conference was arranged, broadcast to over 30 worlds. Peace delegates, warrior tribes, human leaders, even Theralin commanders sat in silence. Virexa walked onto the stage, wearing a simple silver robe. Dane sat in the front row, quietly watching, proud. She stood behind the podium, took a deep breath. And then, she spoke. I was trained to believe peace was weakness. That kindness was a disease. That emotions were chains around the warrior's throat. But I was wrong. Love is not a chain. Love is a door, a bridge, a bond that no war can break. I came to Earth to mock it. I stayed because it changed me. I stayed because he changed me. This human showed me that strength is not how hard you hit. It's how deeply you can feel and still stand tall. If that makes me weak, then I welcome my weakness. If that makes me no longer Theralin, then let me be the first of something new. The hall fell silent. Then slowly, a clap. then another. Then a wave of applause that shook the walls. And far across the stars, in the quiet chambers of the High Council, one masked elder whispered, "She was not infected by Earth. She was freed by it." A new era. Months passed. Alien cultures began opening peaceful bonds with Earth. The term HFY, human for you, became popular across galaxies. It meant, I choose the human way. Warrior women who once only followed strength, now followed a new strength. Connection, emotion, and honesty. Final moments. Under the stars. Dane and Virexa sat on the rooftop of their home. Above them, the night sky sparkled with stars and ships, both Theralin and human. Virexa leaned on his shoulder. "You know," she said, "I once believed love made a warrior soft." "And now?" Dane asked. She smiled. "Now I know. It sharpens the blade. Because now, I have something to protect, not just fight for." Dane chuckled. "I still remember the first time you called Earth a soft flesh mud world." She laughed, a sound once impossible from her lips. "I was wrong," she said. "Earth is not soft. Earth is strong in a quiet way." She looked into his eyes. "And so are you." Asterisk asterisk, they came to mock Earth. But they stayed for love. And in doing so, they helped the galaxy feel something it had long forgotten. Hope.